All right, let's begin. I want to welcome everybody to another edition of Public Leadership Institute's online training sessions. This particular topic, I'm very excited. Some innovative ways to push and forward our agenda and fight back against opponents' efforts to undermine us. And we're going to do some case study analysis of some really pretty ingenious work led by our presenters today. My name is Dave Woodward. I will be your host for today's session. I am the National Network Director with Public Leadership Institute and also a local county official and former legislator. And I, like all of you, look forward to really not only being inspired, but starting to think more creatively on how do we push back against our opponents while lifting up and advocating for the policy change that we're looking for. Before we get into the meat of today's topic, I just want to get a little more background information on Public Leadership Institute. We got a number of new people who are joining us for the first time. The Public Leadership Institute, we're a nonprofit, nonpartisan policy and research center, really focused about bringing attention around key issues of equity and justice. And we also work with local and state elected officials around the country to be more effective in advancing economic and social justice. And so you can get a lot more information about our organization by going to our website at www.publicleadershipinstitute.org, and there you're going to find a host of resources from the Progressive Agenda, Voicing Our Values, more recent publication, A Playbook for Abortion Rights, tools to help advocates, organizers, elected officials be more effective in fighting for our values. So you can get all these things you can get up at the on the website. So feel free to check them out. Also, we want to make sure that people participate in as many ways as possible. I mean, we really believe that bringing your voice into the conversation enhances the overall experience for everybody and the shared learning that's happening here. To that end, there's a number of ways that you can join the conversation. If you have audio capability where you're joining us, if you click on the hand icon at any time over the course of the presentation, when we pause for questions, we can unmute you and you can ask your questions directly to our fabulous panelists today. We realize that people sometimes join us from a variety of locations because you can join these sessions every 2 weeks on your smartphone, tablet, computers, what have you. Sometimes it's easier just to type questions in, and we'll try to get through as many of those that we have time allowed. By typing your question in the question bar, we'll put you in the queue and we'll get to those questions. You can also email me at any time, dwoodward@publicleadershipinstitute.org. If there are any questions for the panelists after the presentation, feel free to reach out and we'll make sure we get those answered for you. During the presentation, it's a little hard to get that, but when I'm not speaking, if you're having technical issues, reach out. I recommend using the chat tool in the question bar to ask those questions. So let me introduce our panelists today. First, and again, we're very fortunate to have Amanda Williams, who's joining us, a native Texan and queer Latina feminist activist from Houston, Texas, now living in Austin. After graduating from the University of Houston with a Bachelor's of English Literature in May of 2011, she worked for Planned Parenthood, Gulf Coast in public affairs until returning to graduate school to obtain a master's in political and social work. Amanda worked in the 83rd Texas legislative session as a policy analyst for the Legislative Study Group in 2013, and then went on to work for a federally qualified health center doing women's health advocacy and policy work. She served on the board of the Lilith Fund from 2012 to 2015 and is now the organization's first ever executive director. And she'll tell you a little bit more about the Lilith Fund herself. Amanda dedicates her life to reproductive justice work and openly shares her abortion story in order to reduce the stigma around abortion. She is a proud ambassador of the National Network of Abortion Funds. We Testify storytelling program, which is dedicated to increasing the spectrum of abortion storytellers in the public sphere. In her free time, you can find Amanda stirring shit up in Texas, rock climbing, hanging out with her cat, drinking good wine, planning her next travel adventure. I guarantee you she's going to be a great addition to this panel. Amanda, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks for reading that entire bio.
No problem. No problem. It got better as I kept going. And I also want to introduce our second panelist, Heather Busby, who's the executive director of NARAL Pro-Choice Texas since November 2012, a longtime supporter of women's rights. She is the co-founded the Lilith Fund and served on the boards of the National Network of Abortion Funds and Law Students for Reproductive Justice. In her previous career, Heather worked in domestic violence law, including working as an assistant county attorney, procuring protective orders for survivors of family violence, sexual assault, and stalking. In law school, she earned the LBJ Civil Rights Award for her work helping victims of human trafficking with the South Texas Civil Rights Project. And Heather loves volunteering in her community and has provided pro bono legal services and taught ESL to immigrants, served as a mentor to middle school students, and in 2016 she helped organize the first ever New Leaders Council Austin Institute. Heather, also thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dave.
Great. Well, and like we said at the very beginning, today's topic is about using disruption and other creative strategies to fight back. And these are the things that are going to agitate our opponents, but also hopefully get the earned media that's necessary to tell our story broadly. And so without any further ado, I'm going to hand over controls to Amanda. And you should have if you show your screen, perfect. I see everything.
Oh, great. Okay. So y'all are seeing this.
Take us away.
Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. This is Amanda. Again, thanks to Dave and PLI for inviting us to be on this webinar. So I wanted to open it up a little bit. I'll tell you briefly about the Lilith Fund, just so y'all know. We're the abortion fund that serves the southern half of Texas. So we provide financial support to people who need an abortion but can't afford it. And essentially, if you just draw a line down the center horizontally of our state, we serve all of the clinics in that area. And last year, we heard from over 6,000 people in need. We've been around since 2001, and we also do some movement building, policy, and advocacy work. And part of that for us, especially in this last year, or this last several months after the election, was kind of figuring out how we define resistance. And I think a lot of people at the national level are kind of, looking at models and looking to states that have, historically, been fighting fights, been facing really oppressive attacks on human rights at all levels. And so it's kind of interesting how the conversation has shifted so much over these last several months, but yet, we know here at the South, the southern region of our country, we have never really depended on our government or on policy making to grant us full rights. And so I think a lot of reproductive rights and justice organizations and groups are coming together in a really cool and powerful way, being that there's seemingly more opportunity for buy-in for folks to get involved and to create disruption, to engage in direct action, and to collectively define what it means to resist. And I think, we'll only continue to organize and see more from on the ground. And so I'm really excited. This has been one of the worst legislative sessions that I think we've seen in a while, but at the same time, we've also seen a lot of great and creative work come out of all of this. So the landscape has definitely set us up in a really interesting and unique position. But I love that, the South is being looked to as sort of a model of what can be possible in the face of the kind of resistance we've been seeing here for years. So I'll talk a little bit about abortion funding for us. Abortion funds, our model, we believe, is truly a form of resistance in and of itself. We see our work as an equitable and just way to transition power to people who, deserve to have their full rights granted, but are constantly being attacked due to, local, state, and national governments, especially here in Texas. We have, as you all know, very extreme laws restricting abortion, and this session was no different. We really got hit hard, but abortion funds are coming together to kind of bring the perspective of what we see on the ground. We primarily hear from low-income women of color. They're, 2/3 of our callers are mothers. They're working to make ends meet. They're, working multiple jobs, caring for their families. And so we definitely try to look at policy and our advocacy work from an intersection of economic, racial, gender, reproductive justice. And so we wanted to bring that to the Capitol and bring that to policy making and policy and decision makers. So we formed our first ever Texas Abortion Funds Advocacy, and so the photo, Advocacy Day. So the photo that you see is most of us who came together to visit with dozens of legislators to talk about our clients. We shared client stories. We unveiled a comprehensive advocacy agenda that the funds put together. And this was really co-led by Lilith Fund and T Fund, which is our sister fund in the northern half of the state. And you can see our advocacy agenda at texasabortionfundsadvocacy.org. And so we basically just brought that really cool perspective, and it was essentially like a list of demands, a very visionary list of demands of things we want to see from our perspective and what we know the barriers are to care and other issues. So that's that photo. We're really proud to do that. With abortion funding, there's such little capacity for action, being that we're very under-resourced. So to bring like over 30 people together was actually a huge success for us. I wanted to bring this because this was a NARAL partnership with Lilith Fund. We did a banner drop. We love this banner. We're a coalition member of All Above All, which is really dedicated to raising awareness around coverage bans, particularly like the Hyde Amendment, which prohibits any federal coverage for abortion care through Medicaid and other federal programs. So I wanted to bring this because we dropped this on the side of one of the major highways in Austin, and we really enjoyed this, and we felt like it got a lot of attention. We got some media, and it was really exciting. And this was the same banner that you might recognize here. This is an image of us disrupting the vote on SB 20, which was a Senate bill that would prohibit any private coverage for abortion in Texas. So this was us literally disrupting the vote. I love Dan Patrick's face in this because he looks so angry. Of course, this banner was then taken from us and we were escorted out by DPS, but we enjoyed this as well. And you can kind of see just an example of our action alert in which we, we're basically encouraging our bases to take action and call the representative or committee members here to oppose the bill. So yeah, we were really engaged with coverage fights as abortion funds in particular. One other initiative that we pushed at, during this session for the first time was working to introduce a bill called Rosie's Law. Rosie, as in Rosie Jimenez, which was the first known woman to die after the Hyde Amendment was enacted, and she was a Medicaid recipient and was unable to pay for her abortion out of pocket, went to Mexico and died from an unsafe abortion. And if Medicaid would have provided coverage, she maybe would have had a chance. But unfortunately, that was not Rosie's fate. And so we worked to get a bill drafted. We called it Rosie's Law in her honor, in her memory, and essentially it would allow the Texas Medicaid program to cover abortion in Texas. Obviously, that's far-fetched and kind of pie in the sky, but we wanted to, put that forth for the first time and start that conversation. So again, coverage was definitely something that was important to us, and we testified regularly whenever we could on coverage issues, and examples like this are things I'm proud of. Abortion funds also worked with our coalition partners at the Trust, Respect, Access Coalition, which is dedicated to promoting proactive policies and fighting back against attacks on reproductive rights. Here we are delivering some petitions to halt any efforts to pass abortion restrictions of any kind from going through calendars committee. So this was kind of a cool thing of just delivering the literal voices, thousands of signatures from people across the state, and asking them to just halt these oppressive policies in their tracks. And then I'll shift gears before I hand it over to Heather. One thing we really wanted to talk about in terms of disruption and resisting is the approach of being really intersectional and really conscious of how other issues that may not necessarily be about abortion can and should matter to reproductive justice advocates. And so for us, we were very involved in the fight against Senate Bill 4, which was an anti-immigrant, sanctuary cities ban. It was, in other words, like a show your papers kind of a bill that had some really troubling implications for immigrants and people of color all over the state. And this is an article in the Texas Observer where many of us were quoted and shared publicly our position on this bill. It was really important for us to show up in this fight. And here's some photos of us. We joined activists in occupying the governor's office to demand to show our opposition to this really horrible, destructive bill that could tear families apart and to expose its racism. And we worked really hard to lift up our own platforms, our own social media presence to bring attention to this bill. You see in the top left, that's some of our folks. It's Lilith Fund and NARAL at a Capitol protest leading up to the sit-in at the governor's office. That's that tweet from Lilith Fund on the right-hand side. And then you'll see some handmaids, which Heather will talk about, who were also present for the SB4 actions recently on Sine Die. So yeah, I think there's a lot to talk about. I could talk literally like all day about like the things we're doing and the things we want to do. It's difficult because abortion funds are grassroots-based organizations. We're grassroots funded. We don't have major funding to be doing this work, and so a lot of us are volunteers. I'm the only full-time staff dedicated to this kind of work. So we do what we can, and we're trying to be as intentional about showing up in the right ways and bringing attention to intersectional causes because we think that all of our rights are on the line, especially with the national platform and landscape the way that it is. And of course, we're used to seeing the attacks on the state level, and we're ready to keep resisting, and I think it's time for these kinds of creative actions. So I'm excited to see this here at home and also to just be a part of the conversation nationwide.
Great. And Heather?
Yeah, thank you, and thanks, Amanda. So I do want to say, while things in Texas are getting pretty bad, our organization has been doing reproductive rights advocacy since 1978 in the state. And today in Texas, we have more folks who are our collaborators and co-conspirators, our coalition partners, than ever before in the state. So that's a positive note, even though the attacks on our reproductive freedoms have been steadily increasing. And it's really exciting to have abortion funds doing more advocacy work, because they really embody the heart and soul of this movement, because they're the ones talking to folks who are the most impacted by abortion restrictions. So it's a great honor to be on this webinar with you, Amanda. So talking a little bit more about cross-movement solidarity. So as Amanda showed in the previous slide, there were handmaids on Monday at the Capitol for the big protest of Senate Bill 4, which is the anti-sanctuary cities bill that Governor Abbott has already signed into law. But the resistance continues, and we expect multiple lawsuits are already actually happening to keep that law from going into effect. And when it comes to cross-movement solidarity, I have to admit that that's not always something that the reproductive rights movement has done the best job of. And it really is groups like the abortion funds and reproductive justice organizations that have shown us the way and made us really start to think about what it means to show up. And I'll just share, in my organization, this session in particular, we had sort of a hard talk amongst ourselves about Senate Bill 4 and the bathroom bill, and it happened after Senate Bill 4 was finally passed and headed for the governor. And we're tired, like we're working constantly. There were 39 anti-abortion regulation bills to regulate or restrict abortion filed in this session in Texas. But we had to talk about our values and how important it was for us to not just, kind of go through the motions, but to really authentically show up for our partners in other social justice movements, and how we really weren't doing a good job of that, and we really should do better. And so, that's part of the reason why we went to the sit-in to occupy the governor's office. I actually made the decision that day to sit in with the civil disobedience and get arrested for me, as a white person, as someone with job security, with access to resources, there is no excuse for someone like me not to put myself on the line for others. And I did it because I wanted to show that for someone like me, it really is a lower risk ask, and that it's important, and it's important to show up and to inconvenience ourselves, because others' lives are very much on the line. Families are being ripped apart in Texas because of immigration policy. So that's just how we've decided we're going to try and show up better, and I feel it's an ongoing process, but it's important to resistance, because if we have any hope of turning the tide in Texas, it's going to take all of us working together across movements to make that happen. And honestly, with this session, which is, I feel confident in saying, was the worst legislative session, the ugliest, nastiest, most hateful that Texas has ever seen, we were all under attack this session. And now is the time to really come together in a way that we haven't yet and move forward and really be a strong, unified movement of different social justice causes. I will say that the session did start out in a very beautiful way, and I apologize for not having a picture of this, but when the session started, at the beginning of session, the Muslim groups were having their Muslim Capital Day. It's their advocacy day, and last session they had been attacked. There were protesters, and so there were organizers organized what turned out to be a human chain or fence around the folks at their rally. And it was a really beautiful movement, because people from all across the city and from different social justice movements and different communities came together in this moment of solidarity and caring. And it was a really beautiful way to start the session. And things got really ugly in the middle, but we ended really strong on Monday with that rally for Senate Bill 4. So I think it's important to remember that we're all in this together, and we're all under attack, and it's a lot more fun to resist together and come up with creative actions. So the Handmaids. So the Handmaid's Tale, I think after the election, a lot of folks there was a renewed interest in Margaret Atwood's book, and articles started to be written about how, oh wow, our current reality is not seeming that far off from this work of fiction. And then the Hulu show was slated to come out. Here in Austin, we have South by Southwest, and Hulu actually had, as a publicity stunt, women dressed as handmaids walking around downtown Austin. And as a joke, we posted on Facebook like, "Oh wow, they should go to the Capitol," and that started a conversation amongst a bunch of different folks and led to creating a Facebook group to plan actions. And within 4 or 5 days, we had located a place to rent red capes, had ordered bonnets, rush delivery off the internet, and had 12 volunteers recruited. So we had a dozen handmaids, and the timing worked out perfectly where there was going to be an anti-abortion bill debated in the Senate chamber. So we went with the element of surprise. We did not notify the press or anyone else, just it was a need-to-know basis, and snuck the handmaids in up the back of the chamber and had them walk out at an opportune moment and then sit quietly. And you can see this photo, the top left is the handmaids when they first walked in, and then the photo right below that is the group of 12 that was sitting in the Senate gallery surrounded by state troopers and plainclothes Senate security staffers. So all those men around them, with the exception of our legislative counsel, Blake Rocap, in the corner, are all from Senate security of one form or other that were threatened by these women. So we it caused a big stir, made a lot of press coverage out of that. It got people really talking, and it was really exciting for the handmaids. It was also another beautiful moment of cross-movement solidarity because it happened to also be Equality Lobby Day. And so what happened was we had intentionally planned to disrupt the proceedings, break decorum in the Senate gallery, and break the rules. So when the bill was called, the handmaids stood up and held signs that represented a timeline of abortion restrictions that have been passed in Texas since 1973. And we knew that when they do that, that was breaking two rules: the standing up and not remaining seated quietly, and holding up signs. Signs are forbidden in the gallery. And the way we snuck them in, we actually took inspiration from the Senate bill for the anti-immigrant bill. The protesters of that bill had done the same thing with a banner. And so we knew that a cloth signs we could sneak in a bag easily or under someone's clothes. So when they stood up, we told them, you're gonna get asked to leave. They may grab you, whatever you do, just stay in character and, just quietly file out. And it happened really fast. It was very aggressive, and the handmaids did a great job of staying in character, even though it was incredibly upsetting. And they walked outside and visibly shaken. And then I said, well, let's go down to the gallery. We had a second set of signs to replace the ones that were confiscated, and walk them down to the rotunda. And it was there that they walked out, and the participants of Equality Lobby Day were in the rotunda and started cheering and clapping for them. So it was a really exciting day for everyone, and folks really wanted to continue these actions. So in the top right-hand corner, you see some handmaids in Houston, Texas, on a sweltering, hot, humid day. They stood out and held this sign at a rally protesting Governor Abbott's speaking engagement he had in Houston. And then after that, the handmaids self-organized a series of sewing circles. We ordered a bunch of red fabric off the internet at a bulk discount, and ordered more bonnets, and volunteers got together over the course of a couple of weeks and held several sewing parties to create capes. And so now we have at present 21 red capes. They are holding more sewing parties to finish off the bolt of fabric, and we anticipate we'll have 30 capes when it's all said and done. And through those sewing parties, it was a time for folks to come together that maybe didn't know each other, are involved in different movements, different causes. They formed bonds and friendships, and learned, shared information about bills that were up, or current events going on in the reproductive health rights and justice movement, and have really formed a beautiful community amongst themselves. And so the sewing circles were the next step, and then we held another action where the handmaids stood in the rotunda, Texas Capitol, and we had volunteers, abortion funds, representatives who were reading stories from people who'd had abortions, sharing those stories. And the handmaid stood behind them silently, holding the timeline signs again. And that one we actually did put out a press advisory and live streamed it on Facebook, and had more intentional coverage, sought out more coverage for this event. Once again, it was really successful. The stories were incredibly powerful. The final story to be read had everyone in tears. It was really, really emotional. Then we had another action where the handmaids walked through. It was a little more theatrical. So first they walked through each of the galleries, crossing at the back of the gallery and filing out and going to the other one. And then they went and stood outside of each chamber, outside the doors, and pointed silently like they do in the show, if you've seen that. And then after that, they went down to the rotunda floor, and it was the first time in character that they actually spoke and chanted shame for, it was approximately 8 minutes. And being in that rotunda with the handmaids chanting shame over and over again, and just the power of their voices, having, you know, sat silently and witnessed what was happening at the legislature, it was an incredibly moving and powerful moment. And then they went out to join a rally to protest the passage of Senate Bill 8, which is the latest omnibus bill to pass Texas. It has a procedure ban on dilation and evacuation that will essentially make second trimester abortion unavailable and inaccessible in Texas. And it also requires that all embryological and fetal remains be buried. So they joined other allies. You can see here our allies with the Texas Freedom Network and their Lies into Law signs. What you can't see is it says, "Don't turn anti-abortion lies into laws," because Senate Bill 8 was passed on a pack of lies, and as other abortion restrictions have been in Texas. So that was another great event. In the meantime, they also self-organized, going in pairs to sit in the House gallery and observe debates, to be a silent presence, reminding lawmakers that we are watching and we are here. And you know, that got some Twitter buzz as well. And then the handmaids, the solidarity action on Monday with the Senate Bill 4, the anti-immigrant bill, with that protest, they also self-organized that. No, you know, organization really had anything to do with it. They got themselves signed up. There were either 18 or 20, I can't remember, of them there as well, and holding signs that for the, you know, the y'all means all, and don't discriminate in the Lone Star State, which were for the bathroom bill opposition, and then the no SB4, no hate signs as well. So showing their cross-movement solidarity. It's been a lot of fun, and using this sort of creative outlet not only has gotten attention of the public in a way that we normally wouldn't, holding, you know, a typical pro-choice rally or, you know, action of some other sort. It's definitely gotten the attention of the leadership and the State House, and of you know, the lawmakers. It has not gone unnoticed, as well as our opposition. There's one particular anti-choice activist who tweets about the handmaids, and that's been an interesting time. So the handmaids have been a lot of fun. Also this session, we've had fun with one of our representatives who's one of our champions. She's the head of the Women's Health Caucus of the House, Representative Jessica Farrar. This session filed a bill that was meant to be satire. It was the Men's Right to Know Act, and it's a play on a real bill that was passed in the early 2000s in Texas called the Women's Right to Know, or AKA the misinformed consent, as I like to call it. And, you know, it said that before a man had a vasectomy, he had to, you know, be given all this information and this, you know, a sonogram 24 hours in advance, and that, you know, before men had to be given information about ejaculation. It was obviously meant as a joke, but it really is pointing out that the state of Texas has a very heavy hand in reproductive decision making, and that it's absurd that Texas, if you're a person seeking an abortion, that the state forces you to receive literature that is medically inaccurate, that is biased, that is misleading, and that they feel that women are incapable of making decisions without state intervention. It did get a lot of attention. It pissed off a lot of the male legislators as well. And we're really proud of Representative Farrar for taking this step, for sending that message. And obviously this bill didn't get a hearing or move, but the fact that it was filed was enough. And finally, I just want to leave with an urging to whether you're in the reddest of the red states like Texas, don't be afraid to push forward with proactive legislation, whether it's a satirical, Men's Right to Know Act, or it's pushing forward with trying to repeal restrictions or overturn the Hyde Amendment, or in our case, our state's version of the Hyde Amendment. It's really important to keep that up, not only for the morale of your people, but also to put it out there in the world. And even if it doesn't pass, what our opposition has done is introduce bills session after session that didn't go anywhere for a while, and eventually they started winning more elections and getting more seats and getting more lawmakers on board, and that's how they've gotten these abortion restrictions through. They didn't do it overnight. It was a long-term thing. So on our side, no matter how bleak the possibilities may be, it's really important to push forward with proactive legislation and try and change the dialogue and control the narrative. So that's all I have for y'all, and I welcome any questions.
This is great. Great. I think concrete tactics and how to push the conversation forward, and in a way that brings attention, or new attention to some of the ongoing struggles that we've all had. At this time, we can open it up to anyone who's has any questions for our panelists, clarification, reaction. Type questions in the question bar or raise your hand. And I'll throw a question out to both of you right now. Like, how much, the Handmaid tail tactic, impromptu, not a lot of lead, at least for media, that was happening. How much total press coverage did you get as a result of that effort, whether through social media or other means?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I've kind of lost track because it was that much. And it continues to this day. I did just, a couple interviews the other day. I know our volunteers have also been doing interviews. Overnight it basically went viral, and every time we've done an action, it's been picked up, and Facebook Live has helped a lot with that. Those have gotten shares, and the video from those Facebook Live videos have been used in, like Now This has put out things, and I've seen different online video clips from the video and different videos that have come out online.
And directly related to that, we got a question from Lauren. Is there any plans to do a national Handmaid action?
So I will say that there's been a lot of cross-state discussion, and folks are sharing their ideas, sharing their experiences, and especially on the costumes, it's probably the most common question. And it makes each state has it. Maybe it's at the State House, maybe it's at another event. What that might look like and how folks want to use this type of action to either fight back or push their own proactive agenda or whatever it is. That really varies from state to state. So a unified, at one time, the exact same action, I don't think there are plans for that. At least here in Texas, different things actually make sense for us. having a big, Handmaid's March on a certain date, not necessarily, I don't know, if folks want to organize that, then great, I would fully support it. But at this time, it's really just a state by state what makes sense for that state.
Keep the questions coming in. If you have audio capabilities, raise your hand or type questions in the question bar. I want to come back to this intersectionality discussion that we had at the beginning of the session. And Erica posed a question, by consciously applying an intersectional approach and showing up for other movements, have you found that other movements have been more willing to help out with your bills and your efforts? So can you, both of you speak to that. Is it paying dividends already?
Well, I can kind of speak to, I think the key in all of that is that when you show up for others in a genuine and sincere way, you're naturally building relationships. And so I think like it's good to think about like, support quantitatively, but I think what's perhaps more important is not looking at relationships for any value on exchange of favors, or I think it needs to be like a really genuine relationship. And so I think it takes time. I think like I haven't really taken tabs on like, oh, I showed up for your bill, are you going to show up for mine, or anything like that. I think it's better for us to kind of look at relationships, relationship building as a central part to authentic movement building and collective power. But I think on that note, absolutely, I've made a lot of friends and a lot of folks who I consider allies across movements who have been more in touch with me about our issues and have been more eager to participate and ask questions and show up for us. I think it's and it's interesting because I would say like abortion is it's very unique. It's almost like on a different playing field, if you will. Like I think there's so much stigma, and especially if you're someone who's had an abortion, there's an extra level of personal stigma, internalized stigma. There's a component there that can be very, very difficult to navigate as an activist. And so there's a lot to be said about that. But I think like for me, I have noticed a willingness, but the thing that I like to draw attention to and to lift up and pay attention to personally is just the aspect and importance of authentic relationship building and not, trying to focus on exchanges or sort of a transactional relationship, but rather just one that is very supportive and compassionate and eager to learn and be there for one another.
Yeah, I mean, you put it beautifully, Amanda. And, I think that by forming those relationships, you're able to have more conversations about how our issues intersect. And I do want to give a lot of credit to other movements and our allies. Back in 2013, when Wendy Davis had her filibuster, that filibuster would not have been possible if our allies had not jumped on board and helped push the information about what we like to call the people's filibuster, the hearing that actually bought us enough time to get us to that final day of that special session. And especially our allies in the LGBTQ community put out a call to their folks, and a lot of them showed up and testified and brought a perspective in sharing their stories and their experiences with abortion that had not really been part of the conversation before. And I think it's really important to remember that they have shown up for us, and it is not transactional. It's about building relationships, and important to remember that.
And I think it's a reminder of that these fights in as organizations where I mean we have a policy agenda and we're pushing individual bills is to see the interconnectivity of all of these things, about trying to create a more equitable and just society. And I hear you, I mean, loud and clear, and demonstrating the value and of showing up and building those relationships in order to advance this is, I think, equally important. I mean, an important strategy of all of this. We talked about how these demonstrations and how these disruptions garner attention. Can you speak to like the enthusiasm in terms of among activists, like when it happens, like how, I mean, are people left more motivated to move to the next step? I mean, it's hard to get wins when you have such a hostile environment, and so I think your examples are great because it's a hostile environment. Does it embolden activists, your volunteers, your members, when you see these types of actions come together for the next one?
Yeah, I think the Handmaid's actions, and maybe it's just that it's something very different. It's creative, and every time we've done something, it's been slightly different from the last. Yeah, the enthusiasm is great. We have no problem getting people who want to show up and do this, during the workday in the middle of the week. And they're always like, when's the next one? And if they can't make it, they're super disappointed. And we have folks who've been showing up consistently who had never volunteered before. It was their first foray into any type of activism, and now they're organizing their own things, and it's a renewed feeling that's different from when we might have a rally or something like that. I really feel that there's more of a community that's been built up around it, and I don't know if it's just because of they're playing a character and it's something new and different, or what it is, but it's been pretty incredible to witness.
Yeah, I would agree. I think creativity is definitely appealing to folks, whether they're new to the movement, but I think especially if they've been around for a while, because I think all of us kind of just get really tired of the same sort of reactionary responses time and time again with kind of little outcomes. And I think, as activists, we're kind of used to like no outcomes, like we fight tooth and nail, and at the end of the day, at the end of the legislative session, like we're still, counting our losses. But I think it's really powerful to see folks coming together in this way, and I think it's almost because things are so bad, it's like this is what this is a transition where we have to start making. Like I think we have to start putting our bodies on the line. We have to start thinking through like what can make people listen, what can get attention, and I think there's a lot of conversations to be had about racial dynamics and who has privilege to be able to kind of be out there in those positions. Like I know when we were talking about banner drops and the sit-in and potential for getting arrested, like these are just really important conversations that I think our movements need to be having, and I've been happy to see those dialogues in our movement, and I think it'll just continue to grow. I think like we should be pushing the fold here. I think a lot of us are just sick of not being heard, and so it's almost like they force a lot of things onto us. Like I think we can be a little bit more aggressive in making people listen as well. And so I think that there's creative ways to do that peacefully and at the same time creatively, and direct action is something I know grassroots folks, historically we've seen, right, like time and time again. The civil rights era, that's, classic examples, but I think like it's definitely like it's almost like we have no choice. Like I think it's time for this kind of intentional shift with really, 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 really careful and critical conversations about who is participating and about the racial justice dynamics of it all. And so I look forward to having those conversations and moving in that direction, because I think it's time. I think like given our president, like it is without a doubt that we're living in like pretty extreme fascism at like every level. And so I'm excited to see what people are willing to do to be heard. And that's, it's frankly very exciting for people in Texas, and it's also just kind of mandatory.
Well, as someone up in Michigan, I am very excited about the stuff happening in Texas. And I was going to ask a very specific question about like how do you have a dialogue and conversation with organizations, organizational leadership to become more comfortable with these types of actions? And I think you explained those incredibly well. And I think we've covered all the questions, so I'll give you both the final word as we wrap up. I think this is incredibly informative. I think it gives something for people to take away and start thinking about how do they support their own activism in order in advancing their organizational priorities, policy agenda. And I think, underscored with what you said, is like making certainly that our side is heard.
I'll go ahead and go. This is Heather. Yeah, I would say, first of all, feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or, even just general support. We're, really happy to see things happening in other states, and especially with the Handmaids, sharing that and seeing that grow across the country has been it's kind of gotten me through a really brutal legislative session. So thank you to everyone who's interested in that or picked it up, or and anything that you're thinking about doing or any conversation you want to have. I have an open door to anyone who has questions or needs support. My advice would be to don't be afraid to be bold and take risks. Don't worry about like, oh God, what are going to be the metrics on this, or what's going to happen next. Like, don't think about that. Think about if you take that risk, you think about the impact that you could have. When I brought the Handmaid's idea to my staff, they're like, excuse me, what are you going to do? Like, they were very perplexed. And then it became so exciting, and it really took off in a way that we did not imagine. We had no goals or set expectations or outcomes for those actions. We just seized on an opportunity and went for it, and it turned out really great. So, and if it doesn't turn out great, well, then you learn from that and you seize on the next opportunity. Just don't be afraid to try new things.
Yeah, I would just piggyback. I think, being bold and intentional and proactive are all really important things when you're trying to make changes. I think the repro movement really needs to, pay attention to what people of color groups, people of color-led organizations are doing and saying. I think like it's really important to be collective and work together. I think the intersectional focus is always a really good way to broaden impact and bring people in. I think there's so much existing infrastructure, and I think just tapping into the power that's there and getting buy-in from leaders across the repro movement and other movements is just always a good way to make sure you're being collaborative. And yeah, I agree with Heather. If people want to reach out to activists here, I think we're all really willing to talk and communicate. I feel like Texas can be very isolating, and I always feel kind of alone here. But I know there are a lot of other really rad red state organizers and folks in blue states who are doing great work too. And it's just I think we need each other more than ever now. And so I would love to stay in touch, and I'm also available if folks want to collaborate or brainstorm or just connect.
Great. Well, I want to thank both of you. I think you've given us a lot of ideas. I think you're absolutely right in your political calculus that this is the moment to really put these ideas into practice and put pedal to the metal. And you both are inspirations for these fights, whether it's progressive fights in red areas or trying to push the needle in areas where we have a more politically favorable environment. So thank you both for making your time available to be with us around the country today. For everyone else, thank you again for everyone for joining. You can join us every 2 weeks, usually around this time. Spread the word. I think these are incredible opportunities to share on some learnings, to share best practices, to work together to move the needle to advance economic and social justice around the country at the local and state level. So I want to thank our panelists. Thank you all for joining, and until next time.